Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The InsurTech Summit 2021 by CXO Global Forum has been tremendous so far. We've been hearing very good feedback, except for the little network challenges here and there. But we promise you we're committed to the core. Um, Now we have a panel discussion that I am going to moderate. The panel discussion is on digital versus traditional insurance. Are the differences truly that great? But before we speak to our panelists, let me introduce them to you. So we've got Mr. Sohail Jaffer. He's the managing director at Genesis. Mr. Ali Nadeem, he's the chief operating officer at IGI Life Assurance Limited. And Mr. Faisal Khan, he's the chief risk officer at IGI General Insurance. So before I move on to the questions, I believe Mr. Faisal Khan here has a very interesting presentation for us. Mr. Faisal Khan, you have the floor.
Great.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Just let me start off the presentation. Right. So I believe the presentation is visible to all of you there, Anza?
Yes, sir. It is.
Great. Great. Well, we started off the day with a very good presentation by the chairman, SECP, Mr. Amir Khan, and what a tremendous talk by him. Absolutely, the regulator of his own league. This was something which was missing for quite some time in Pakistan. We must say that SECP has been quite active in having these regulations implemented for some time. But then in the recent few years, when we had the changes in the overall regulatory regime, the pandemic, SECP has came out to be as one of the regulators here who actually created a very, very supportive environment for all of us here in the insurance community. So, again, I am very much grateful to the CXO Global Forum here, giving us an opportunity to present our case here. Well, when we talk about the traditional versus the digital, the only thing which comes to my mind is for the insurance to go digital here in Pakistan, because yes, it has been traditionally a market which has developed over time, say 75 years since the creation of the country, on a very minuscule level. We started off with very few companies here, and IGI was actually one of those since the very beginning in the early 1950s. So we have had quite a commendable journey all along, and we grew by the mergers and acquisitions. At one point in time, we acquired the Royal and Sun Alliance operations, and later in 2012, we acquired MetLife Alico's operation and formed it into IGI Life. So we had that both flavors of general and life business together in Pakistan, though we have to have two separate licenses. So there's been recent restructuring 3 years back, perhaps, when we formed the IGI Holdings, and then IGI General and Life are all the subsidiaries of IGI Holding. Just a brief of the company as such. Well, I'll start off giving you a snapshot of the local perspective here when we talk about the traditional and the digital ways of doing insurance. Well, hey, if you could see on the right hand side of my screen here, you see there's like the honeycomb here, and I have tried to fix in as much scope or potential we see for the insurance business to grow in Pakistan. So to talk about the micro level insurance business, we see that we have a potential of almost like 32 million houses all across the country, more than 10 million automobiles running on the roads. The country of our size, you see 10 million cars, many assembled here within the country, and some obviously imported here, but this includes all the makes and kinds of the commercial and private sector and the public sector vehicles. Now, this sector actually generates almost like $150 million worth of premium at the moment, and being almost 1/10 of the total sector, which is insured. So just think about the potential we have. $150 million can convert into 1.5 billion US dollars worth of premium should this sector goes mandatory for insurance. So I think there's a lot to be done by our legislators
Right.
sitting in
Mr.
the
Khan,
avenues here.
apologies for the interruption, but if you could reconnect your presentation, I think the slides, we couldn't see the change of slides.
Really? Do you see it now?
Maybe if you could reconnect it?
Okay, I'll try it again. Thank you.
Yes, please. Right. And while we wait, let me just remind you all that we have an interesting set of questions to ask our esteemed panel here. I'm going to introduce them one more time. So joining us today is Mr. Sohail Jaffer. He's the Managing Director of Genesis. Mr. Ali Nadeem, he's the Chief Operating Officer at IGI Life Assurance Limited. And Mr. Faisal Khan, the Chief Risk Officer at IGI General Insurance. Now, post-pandemic in particular, we've seen a lot of shift towards digital insurance. And today we're going to be addressing that topic, traditional versus digital insurance. Mr. Faisal, we're good now.
Great.
We see the honeycomb.
Yeah, that's great. When you talk about the innovative disruption, the only thing which comes to my mind thinking of disruption is the disruption we face here since morning. So sorry for that. My apologies. If this is now clear, visible to you, I can just reconnect. If you could see here that I was just telling you about the presence of the automobiles on the streets of the country, rural and urban together. We have an exposure of more than 10 million cars, both in the private and the public sector, also includes the commercial. I was just telling you that the current less than 1 million cars or the vehicles or the automobiles which are insured generate the business of around 150 million US dollars. So just think about the potential we have to grow should we have the law or the regulations to get the motor insurance mandatory at the national level. Likewise, we have a huge population base, and out of those, 81 million adults who age from 25 to 54 years. Now here you have a huge set of corporate and industrial sector employees, the workforce who is there in the market, the youth of the country. But when you look at the flip side of this, you see it's less than 3% of the total GDP we expend on the health sector. When we talk about the facilities, the infrastructure at the grassroots level, you see if we just have one physician per 1,000 people in the country, or it further translates into 0.6 beds for 1,000 people across the country. Now, this is something which is not a very promising number, and then again tells you that what room we have here to grow and expand in terms of providing the healthcare services and outreach. Now, this sector is very much linked to the life insurance piece of the business, which my colleague Ali Nadeem and IGI Life is going to probably elaborate further in his talks here. The other thing is the other sector which comes to our mind is the agribusiness, which is almost like 15 billion US dollars. Now, why we mark this here as one of the growth engines? The thing is that when we talk about the economy, we say the total size of the economy of Pakistan is somewhere close to 280 billion US dollars. And when you see the $15 billion coming out of those $280 billion, this is quite small and quite minuscule. Now, when we call ourselves an agricultural country, I think there is a lot more need to be done, a lot more effort to be done to document this economy. And we strongly believe that we do have a parallel economy, fortunately or unfortunately, which gives us enough room to maneuver and expand. So the number which we see here, these are all the numbers which are the published numbers on the state bank websites or the Bureau of Statistics. But having this inclination in the mind of the parallel economy of almost the same size we have the documented, you see there's an immense potential for the insurance business. You must have known that the government has actually spent quite a great amount of time and effort in bringing the sector to the limelight, and many of the banks are now actually lending loans to the small scale farmers, and the scheme is very well protected and subsidized by the federal government. Then you talk here about the LSM sector, where we see it's contributing almost like 36 billion US dollars to the gross domestic product we have. And likewise, we talk about the CPEC, where we see the Chinese government and some of the institutions, the federal institutions, would be expending almost 62 billion US dollars in the country. Now, this translates into 300 million US dollars worth of insurance business just from the general side. What to talk of the life is a separate matter. But when you talk about the general, there are all different classes where we get the business in. And primarily it is property and engineering for all those engineering projects which are coming up. So here we have both opportunities and challenges. If you could see on the left side of my screen here, we talk about the innovation and the tech application. As we could see from the earlier sessions today, I think this had a lot of resonance with what the chairman, SCCP, has said in his morning session. And then again, for a country of our size, more than 235 or 250 million people, we have quite a high tele-density. Now, this tele-density is providing us an immense potential to grow across all different channels of the insurance business and the financial inclusion. And here, we talk about the big data. The only problem we have amongst the insurers here in Pakistan, I could see that though we have an association which is called IAP, Insurance Association of Pakistan, and we have like a partnership or a membership of all majority of the companies there. But yet again, when it comes to the setting up of the data, I think we are quite lacking behind when we see how the world has moved on. When we compare ourselves with the neighbors, and if we are used to actually most of the time, good or bad, or ugly, but here when we talk about the insurance business particularly, you see that in India, just right across the border, the total volume of the insurance business, both from life and non-life, is exceeding 70 billion US dollars. And for us, it is hardly a couple of $billion, which includes the state-owned insurance companies' businesses as well. So the thing is that the companies, the country's size, you see, is probably like six-folds to us. But when it comes to the insurance penetration, I think we are surely lagging behind. But what is attractive from our market is actually the quality of the business we produce. Since I've been in the insurance business for quite some time, almost like 20 years, and I've been dealing with quite many reinsurers abroad, with the likes of Swiss Re and Munich Re, and many other international partners who are, in fact, the exclusive partners for us as well in Pakistan. We know that the quality of the underwriting results is still somewhat better. When you talk about the $2 billion US dollars worth of premium, the kind of the underwriting profit we produce, it's somewhere to the tune of 2.5% to 3% of the total business we write, or seed actually outside Pakistan. But when it comes to the neighboring countries, I think they're hardly break even. So the thing is, yes, there is immense potential, and it's not going to be totally filled up by the traditional means of selling insurance. We must have had a chance to hear from our colleagues, Numan Bashir and Mr. Nadeem as well, who have quite elaborated about the embedded insurance and the concept of embedded insurance through the digital channels. And that's the thing, when you talk about the huge population base we have here and the immense potential in terms of the growth, be it the large scale manufacturing or the automobiles, the new automobiles assemblers coming to the country, I think the potential is enormous. The only challenge here we see is I have actually tried to enumerate 4 of them, which are probably we came across every now and then. And the first thing which comes to our mind is basically consumer privacy. Most of the time when you travel, I mean, in the last 2 years, no one actually could get a chance to travel as frequently as they used to be in the good old days, the pre-pandemic days, I must say. You must be carrying your gadgets where you get a chance to get connected over the Wi-Fi, be it at the airport lounges or any kind of the coffee lounge, any kind of the business lounges of the airlines. The moment you get connected to the Wi-Fi, you start receiving a number of the advertisements, and what they're doing is actually popping up all the time with all the different channels which are available out of there in that very region, be it the network you would like to use, be it your choice of the best coffee, your choice of the best donuts, anything which comes to your mind starts popping up in your own stream. But then again, here when we talk about the consumer privacy, this is something which is now very much sabotaging the whole concept when there is no regulation, or perhaps if the regulation is in place, it's probably not very well implemented or being observed within the country. And we see that most of the time when we have these cyber incidents, when people are losing their very basic information details like the CNIC, like the information which is shared with many of the banking institutions, many of the financial institutions, and these are sold into the black markets against a price. So the consumer privacy and the data protection is the first and the foremost thing when you talk about the digital growth in the country. And the digital growth, I mean, both for the financial inclusion, inclusive of the insurance business and the banking. Then you have the distribution channels. You see, in Pakistan, what we have seen in the past 75 years, that the business has grown by virtue of the close, intimate relationships we have been able to develop or nurture over time with the industrial conglomerates. Each of these industrial conglomerates happen to have people who are very closely knit into their communities, and then the same are responsible to place insurance in the local market. Now, in the last few years, I must say the whole decade, we have seen a huge change coming up when we are seeing that international brokers are coming to the market, and then they're introducing these very local clients to the international network by making roadshows out in the Lloyd's market, in the US markets, in the Far East and the Middle Eastern markets. You see, there's a whole diaspora of the new market coming to our marketplace, and that's what the game changer is.
Right. Mr. Faisal Khan, if I may interrupt you a little there, in the interest of time, can we move on to the discussion of the panels, or if you'd like to just wrap up?
I'll just quickly try to wrap up because this was the main slide actually I had to show here.
Right.
Well, this is the competitive landscape of and the sources, the Swiss Re here, and you could see that we being the one of the emerging markets, excluding China, has immense potential for the growth, was like 4.7% of the world average of 2.8. And when it comes to the macroeconomic environment, you see here Pakistan is in a small red here, where when you talk about the inflationary impact and the currency devaluation, we actually had a negative growth over some time. But when you talk about the future prospect business, which is the realized growth, you see is still green here alongside other neighboring countries. When you talk about the global losses, because you see, when you talk about the insurance business, you have to be mindful of what the insurance industry on a global scale looks like. And you see here that the majority of the losses which comes, the insured losses somewhere close to 202 billion US dollars, but out of those we have the natural catastrophe losses coming up to the tune of 81 billion US dollars, and that too from all the kind of the natural catastrophes, be it the Australian fires, the recent fires in Turkey, in the US, the floods in the Far East, and the China. We see atmospheric disturbance is one of the biggest catastrophe which has changed the whole landscape of the insurance business. And how to get this sorted out for the insurance business, for the benefit of the insurance community, you have to have the insurance business aggregates. When you talk about the Pakistani business, you see in the 2010 we had the heights of the floods. Had we had the data available, the big data I was referring to, the geographic coordinates, we could have had easily pointed out that what kind of an impact and exposure could affect the insurers in the country. Luckily, we had, or unfortunately, the insurance penetration being so low, we had such a huge economic loss, but it couldn't turn out into a potential insurance loss. Likewise, you see here, where a few years back, we had a huge widespread rains in Karachi. You see, there's a huge, urban space, which is obviously a classic example of a land use planning here within the city, within urban metropolis. You see, we do not have those aggregates of the residential areas who could be exposed to natural catastrophes. And we have like examples, many. This is here in front of you, the map of the Punjab, where you see all of those, the river tributaries. Just think and imagine that the billions of dollars worth of exposure which comes from the fertilizer sector, the energy sector, the power sector, the agricultural businesses. We have huge exposure worth billions of dollars into one single location. And had we been able to specify the geo coordinates on our databases, would have been in a much better position, not only to price those risks, but also to make a good use of AI and the machine learning in terms of our loss modeling. One thing which comes to my mind back in the days, back in 2010, if I could remember correctly, when we had those immense floods coming in the whole of the Far East and the southeast of China. The areas like Philippines and Thailand were nowhere there on the NatCat maps of the reinsurers, be it the Suez, Munich, or whosoever. But what we got to know from them, that there were huge BI losses, there were huge disruption coming in from those exposures. So AI actually makes a lot of difference when you have that data available to yourself. Now, the key takeaways from the whole of this is basically the three-pronged strategy, which is the human resource, capital investment, and the supportive regulatory regime. I think I touched base upon on the human resource. When you talk about the innovation and the training and development, there's something which you need to think about is the capital investment, which has to be sustainable and proportionate to the funds to be there in the business for the development of the IT infrastructure and outreaching the digital mass market. And then there has to be a long-term commitment coming from the sponsors, the core drivers of the business, the main business houses, and then the supportive regulatory regime, which can help us grow, not only the life sector, but also the non-life by providing us an opportunity in the shape of the tax-free corridors, consumer protection, mandatory insurances like the auto, health, household, agri-sector through active legislation. And this is all I had to say. Thank you for bearing with me all along.
Mr. Faisal Khan, I would especially extend my gratitude to the other two gentlemen. And sir, we've spoken over, sir. Mr. Faisal has gone over most of the points that we were going to traditionally discuss. But let's move the conversation a little uh, more direct to the audience and the kind of questions that we're getting. So, starting with you, Mr. Sohail Jaffer. So, sir, in non-technical terms, so that the layman can understand, what are the key differences between digital and traditional insurance?
In reality, if you like, the traditional insurers are coming with a paper-based approach to the market, and their processes are largely manual. And on the other side, you've got the young crowd, which is the InsurTechs, who are basically coming up with technology-based solutions for solving specific problems or pain points, if you like. So if you want to think about it as drawing a parallel with the airline industry, you have the legacy carriers, the big airline carriers, whether it be PIA or British Airways. And then you have the discount carriers, which have actually gained a significant share of the market because they've actually understood what the consumer wants and how they can actually make life easy, and the travel costs are reduced. So EasyJet and many other discount liners have actually cornered the market, and the big legacy players are struggling now. And some of them have started their own discount carriers as well. Yeah. So I think a similar analogy to the insurance world, I wouldn't say that the legacy or traditional players are sitting on their seats, because we heard from EFU Life that they have been in the forefront of digital transformation. So many of the traditional players are in a catch-up mode to use technology, embrace the digital transformation. And on the other side of the extreme, you have the InsurTech companies, which are trying to solve specific problems and are really enablers for the traditional insurance industry. And then you have the SECP framework for digital insurers, which are pure, like neobanks, which are pure digital banks or digital insurers. So they are, the other side of the equation. So that's what I see from here. I think Pakistan has a big opportunity. As we heard, the Pakistan premiums total, as Faisal may have mentioned, is only 2.5 billion, whereas the global insurance market is nearly $7 trillion, according to Swiss Re. The trillion versus billion, and 2.5 billion in a neighboring country. We have 70 billion, as Faisal mentioned. So we are really at the very, very start of the business. E-commerce is not new to Pakistan. I mean, you have all the e-commerce platforms operating, the aggregators are there. So in the other sectors, the penetration of e-commerce is significant, especially with COVID now. But I think today, the world of financial services, mainly insurance, is at the moment a laggard and has to catch up with the real world. So that's my take on it for the time being. I'll leave Ali Nadeem and Faisal to comment further.
Right. Ali, your take on the topic, please.
Yeah, I think the way I see digital and traditional is on the digital side. I think I want to for the betterment of the audience, I want to separate two things. One is how you go and sell the insurance policy. So and the other is a digital experience. So the way I'd like to differentiate is, so if I want to go and buy a motor policy, I go online, I'm able to buy a motor policy. So that's a digital experience on how I go and purchase a motor policy. But then there's a completely digital experience whereby, for example, if I'm only using insurance when I'm driving, that's a digital experience I have. So in my view, in Pakistan, I think we are, the real need right now is having that digital experience. We've introduced it with Vitality on the life insurance side, whereby traditionally what used to happen is that whatever, so if I'm buying a policy at the age of 35, my premium is going to stay for same for the term of the policy that I've gotten. It's not going to take into account if my life is deteriorated or if I've developed any certain issues with my health. It's not going to adjust to that. But with volatility, what happens is that over time, if you're improving your health or you're deteriorating your health, the premiums and your benefits tend to change. And similarly, on the motor side, I believe IGI has enough data, and then internationally also there are these companies that have come up with, which track the driving behavior and are able to change the pricing. So I think where the real game changer is the digital experience. In Pakistan, I know there are a lot of aggregators out there, but that is going to take some time for the consumers to get used to. But on the digital experience side, I think the market is fully geared, and I think we're going to see big successes coming up very shortly.
Thank you so much, Ali. Now, gentlemen, I was researching for this particular topic, and I came across, something interesting. And one of the surveys said, InsurTech is the emergence of innovative and disruptive technologies that are transforming the current insurance industry model. Improving efficiency and enhancing customer satisfaction are some of the InsurTech benefits. Now, Mr. Faisal Khan, you did elaborate on some of these during your presentation as well. But why has the focus been towards increasing or enhancing customer satisfaction in particular, rather than, on the sales side of things? So you need to unmute yourself, please. I've done it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Another disruption. Well, yes, coming back to the question you just mentioned, you see, when we talk about the digital transformation and the customer experience, it has transformed countless commercial industries, from manufacturing and retail to hospitality and healthcare. The insurance industry has traditionally been very, very slow, I must say, especially in Pakistan perspective, to modernize. And it's now more clearer than ever that the time is now for the insurers to embrace digital transformation. Well, insurers today have had to digitize the various aspects of their operations to keep up with the demands of the insureds. Any business that wishes to stay competitive in today's marketplace must meet customers there and when they need something. The digital transformation of insurance, powered by the artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analysis, mobile service, live chat, and the chairman.
I get the picture, sir. You've made a valid point, but I would like to ask Mr. Sohail Jaffer on the fact that, sir, like Mr. Faisal Khan mentioned, that if insurers are to remain relevant now, they have to go digital. However, for a larger part of the emerging market like Pakistan, people still prefer to meet other people in order to invest with them or sign up for a policy. How far do you think this statement is true? And do you think traditional insurance can still compete? Sir, you need to unmute your mic.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Right.
I think for certain lines of business, we'll follow a hybrid model where you need advisors who are qualified to provide advice on pensions, on savings, on wealth accumulation programs. And technology is only an enabler to execute the transaction and provide the servicing. So I think that there will be always a role for agents, or for what I would call qualified advisors, who are trained and who can provide advice. You can always say, well, we have chatbots and we have robo-advisors like we have in Europe who can provide you with all that. But I think for Pakistan market, having dealt with it, I think we still need the human touch points for certain types of solutions which are offered in the market. And technology can play a role combined with the qualified advisor to provide that. Okay, so I think there is a role for both in what I call a hybrid model for the transitional phase before the masses are able to deal with the fully digital journey which Ali Nadeem is referring to. I mean, when you take a look at the demographics of Pakistan and you look at the purchasing power and the segmentation, I mean, it's only roughly about 20% of these affluent and mass affluent customers who are in the laps of the traditional insurers. The masses, financial inclusion, who are, as Nadeem Hussain talked about this morning, who want, 1 rupee, 2 rupees per day or whatever, they're not really on the radar screen of any major insurer, okay? So that's where the issue is. I mean, health insurance for that sex, when you analyze the client profile, the man on the street is not really benefiting from insurance. If you take the agri sector, which Mr. Faisal mentioned is 15 billion, then agri-tech, which uses satellite and sensor technology to predict droughts, floods, and harvesting using parametric solutions, is no longer is not even existing in Pakistan, to the best of my knowledge. Yeah, I sit on one of the reinsurers which does agri-tech in the UAE market. So I'm just saying that I think there's a long way to go, but there will always be a role for qualified advisors for certain lines of product. Commodity products like automobile insurance and all that can be transacted online and serviced digitally, as Ali and Nadeem mentioned as well. And also health business, telehealth, and the health business using sensors and wearable devices. Vitality is a great example, which IGI have. Those kind of programs can go on without really human intervention. They're simple, and you can monitor that. So that's the difference. Yeah. So automobile and health, I think, will be okay for digital, but I think things like pension and savings, which is very much emotional and very much sensitive, that will need qualified advisor intervention.
Agreed, sir. Thank you. Ali, your take on the fact that can traditional insurance still compete?
So traditional insurance definitely on products like savings plan, where a broker or an agent needs to have sit across with a person, explain to them the pros and cons of getting the right product. I think that will remain for a fair bit of time the way it is right now. So definitely the traditional and the digital insurance part both can compete. The traditional part definitely can compete with digital there. But the way everybody has their own way of seeing it. The way I see it, I think 3-4 years down the road, digital insurance on some of the products is definitely going to be a major player. For example, health insurance. You don't need a broker and a person interaction to tell them you need health insurance. All these products are now with the aggregators there, and with all the insurance companies putting up their products online. I think that transition for health insurance is going to happen very quickly. Similarly, for I think motor, there may come a time where internationally you don't call up if you're buying a motor policy in Canada, for example, you don't need to call up an agent. You just go digitally. There are aggregators you buy. So Pakistan is going to transition towards that as well. So it'll depend on the product where traditional and digital can compete. But in some products, I think digital will overtake the traditional part definitely.
Wow, that's interesting. Sorry, you had something to say?
Yeah, which is very believable, right? Because I think Sohail Saab gave the airline industry as a very good example, where the way the traditional airline people were trying to go about it, digitally you were able to do it much better and faster. I think there's so many other industries. Netflix, I think, is another great example where you don't see CDs coming out anymore. So yes, definitely there will be areas where traditionally you won't be able to either sell insurance or give any experience there, so you'll have to go digital there.
Right. Now we've got a question from the audience, and it's targeted to Mr. Faisal in particular. Sir, which lines of business, in your opinion, could be transformed digitally, and how much is the local industry of insurance prepared?
Well, yes, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think it's a very nice question. But when we talk about the digitization of the insurance business, especially in Pakistan, I must say that we are nowhere close to entities like Netflix, like Airbnb, like Booking.com. Like we're nowhere close to it. When it comes to selling digital, I'm still very, very conservative, usually most of the time, and being blamed for that as well. But then, we talk about the insurance business. Since I happen to sit in one of the forums which represents the insurance industry at IAP, out of the 100 billion worth of premium we write every year from the private sector only, the business which is actually moving into the digital section, or the growth which is derived from the digital means, is nowhere close to 1 to 2% of that. So that is again a very meager number when I say the future per se. But yes, it has immense potential. There are a lot many aggregators coming up, and we see a lot of competition. Back in the days, 10 years back, when I had all my hair black, we had a good amount of premium coming to us every single smaller policy we used to sell. And believe you me or not, now when I sell the same motor policy on any of the digital channel, we see only a fraction of that premium. So as I say, yes, there is immense potential, but by virtue of the over competitive pricing, there is a fierce competition, and because of this, the growth is there. But what we see is that the number, I think it would take some time to swell to come to some sensible thing. But then again, having said all this, people like I can fairly say that here with the people, the newcomers like the TPL, the old players like EFU and RMG and the likes of us, I think there is a lot more growth and momentum in this segment. And the two lines which we see has immense potential to grow digitally is motor, and the other being travel or the healthcare. So see, these two have, as I said presented in my presentation earlier on, the number is huge. But the matter is, the fact of the matter is that they have to have a very good governance by the regulator. We have all listened to the chairman in the morning, the chairman SECP, that they're not going to micromanage things. And obviously there is, I think, and he used the word that we are mature enough, the insurers are mature enough to see what the right price levels are for us to have the right sustainability. So that is something which is quite prominent when it comes to the digitization of the business, is the sustainable profitability of the business.
Absolutely. Now we've got another question from the audience, and I think Mr. Sohail Jaffer, they want you to answer this one. So it says, Mr. Kareem Merchant says, one of the reasons for this big gap in insurance penetration in Pakistan comparing other countries is in people's myth about insurance. How can the technology allow to overcome this thinking in Pakistan?
Okay, 1 second. Okay. I think it's a very good question. I think the real thing is that the perception of insurance, not only in Pakistan, but in the emerging markets, if we go to the savings products, the results produced by these savings products, as was mentioned by Nadeem Hussain this morning, is inferior to what the asset managers have produced directly in their mutual funds because of the heavy cost load, and the way the product has been distributed. So I think the real challenge is that we need to basically move forward and work out what is appropriate for the consumer market segment. So I think that we need to, if you take the sectors in Pakistan which are rather neglected at the moment, it's the SME, the agricultural sector, and the mass retail, if you like, which have income levels not more than maybe 30, 40,000 rupees a month or even less. So I think that is where we should really concentrate our forces to increase the penetration. But the perception of insurance on claims is also rather poor. I mean, when it comes to claims, it takes weeks, if not months, to get a claim settled. If it's a motor car accident or a life, mortality. And that is not really on anymore because, I mean, the person who's paid the premiums expects the claim to be settled fairly quickly. Maximum, I would say, 3 days, but not 3 months. So that is where the issue is. And putting the fine print to the customer at the last minute to say, well, I mean, I had this recent experience with a global insurer in Luxembourg when there was a windstorm, the shutters were damaged, put the claim in, and get a reply back after 2 days saying, I'm sorry, we can't meet the claim. Why can't you meet the claim? Because on page 80 in the fine print, it says that the wind has to be 80 kilometers per hour. I said, in that case, the house wouldn't be there. The damage to the shutters, you can forget about it. So all these kind of fast tricks, as we talked about transparency, the insurance industry needs to improve its image, which is the question that Mr. Merchant raised, and that, unfortunately, will take time. It's not a question of simply raising consumer awareness and education, but the insurance industry must deliver on the promise made to the consumer or the customer.
Right, sir. Some very pertinent points made there. Now, Mr. Ali Nadeem, it is said that it's easy to see the complementing nature of, let's say, insurance and technology. Now, the challenge becomes finding the sweet spot where collaboration is most successful and then implementing it. Now, do you agree with this statement?
Absolutely, and I think that I keep coming back to vitality example. You see, when I think about vitality, what vitality, all it does is it incentivizes people for living a healthier life, right? And that is all done or monitored digitally. Now, vitality alone, if I go and tell you, if you live healthy, I'll incentivize you. In whose interest it is to incentivize somebody living healthy? I mean, I like my kid to live a healthy life, but I can incentivize him with whatever. But why would I go and incentivize the public to live healthy? Only insurance company would be interested to do so, right? Exactly in the same way, an insurance company would have a lot of interest in a driver driving his or her car safely, because they know that they will play the game less. And both these transitions can happen, or these integrations can happen digitally, as well as you need the traditional insurance backing, the benefit when it comes through the digital experience. So definitely, I think they complement each other, and the multiple examples now of success that we are seeing through telematics and vitality on the life side, globally and also locally now.
Right. Thank you very much. Mr. Faisal Khan, your take on finding this sweet spot.
Well, yes, when you talk about the digitization and finding this sweet spot, you must need to understand that scalability and agility of the product is extremely important, when it comes to the customer satisfaction. And though it's been so far very nimble and both at the front end or the back end of the operations, but then historically, when we used to sell the insurance product, we were not very well concerned about the untoward incidents. There is a syndrome here, and it's not specific to our people, it's across the globe. It's called "it's not going to happen to me" syndrome. So something which we used to buy here, or we used to sell here rather, it's just a piece of paper. And to give that satisfaction to your customer and finding out that it serves the purpose to the very best level, it's extremely skillful thing to do. And that's probably one of the reasons of a very small insurance penetration here in our country. So I think the way you personalize these products, the way how efficiently you deal these, sell this product, and not only sell, but administer the whole year round. I mean, be it life or general business, especially in the corporate sector, you do have to be there. You have to be there all the time, available to your customers. It's now more happening in the pandemic days that we happen to work from home most of the time, and people now complain they are kind of constrained to work more rather than working at offices. So the whole reason is that there is a tendency out there in the public and your customers that something, when it needs to be serviced, has to be serviced at that very moment. It's not the same day, it's not the same hour, it's that very moment. And that's where the digitization takes place, when you go and work by virtue of the app. We at IGI General, we happen to have developed many apps actually, where we deploy at the customer's ends, and it's the B2B product, and at times can be B2C as well. So many of our customers can generate their own documents themselves. It's priced all together. The document is all worded. They can get printed. It doesn't need any stamping or digital signature, because the document is already agreed upon with the customers. When it comes to the claims which Sohail was just referring to, in the Europe, here in Pakistan, now the trend is changing, and you can get the same claim service at your doorstep. You don't need to get your automobile or your car to the workshop first to get this surveyed. You just need to take a few clicks for your own cell phone, the smartphone, send it across to the app. The claim would get registered. It will give you a prompt, and then the surveyor would be there right in the next hour at your doorstep. So, and you get the thing settled very quickly as well.
Right.
And this is the smaller thing. When you talk about the scalability, I must say, just please let me complete. I'll just not take more than a minute again. That something which is at the pinnacle of this is basically the how personalized and how efficient you are in serving to that need.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the valuable feedback. Unfortunately, we have far exceeded today's time for this session, but I'd like just quick ending notes from you all. Please keep them short and crisp. Starting with you, Mr. Sohail Jaffer, how long do you think the transition will take, traditional versus digital? Short. Yeah, so we can hear you.
I mean, transition in the emerging markets, if you take Asia, they're far advanced. I mean, Asia, Southeast Asia, I mean, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, where I've been to all these markets. And I would say that there the transition is much more accelerated. If we take India and China, then again, it's accelerated because of technology, which is the underpinning factor. In Pakistan, I think we have a lot of potential in the transition phase in Pakistan. I would say is a 5-year period for certain lines, not for all the lines. We've heard from Ali, Nadeem, and Faisal that IGI have done a lot of good stuff in telematics and in terms of the wearable devices for their Vitality program. But I think there will be a transition period in Pakistan of about 3 to 5 years before we can see the digital journey, not just on the front end, as we heard from Ali Nadeem. It's not a question of online interaction to buy something, but it's the whole servicing of the value chain that has to be done digitally. And that is where I think we will take time. I mean, Mr. Faisal commented about a surveyor coming to your place to get the car examined. We have seen in the United States that there's no surveyor. You just take a snap, an algorithm works out the estimate, the car is booked to the garage, an Uber is sent to you where the accident's seen, you get into the Uber, a tow truck comes and takes your car away. That's what the customer expects. When you hit Google for a search engine, you expect instant discovery of what you're looking for. And the customer expectations are raised accordingly today. They're looking for instant satisfaction. They're not waiting for weeks and months to hear about a claim, yeah, or any other matter that they raise with a query. Yeah?
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Mr. Ali Nadeem, same final ending thoughts.
So
Please.
just to save everybody's time, ditto to what Sohail Saab has said. Certain lines, I don't think that the sale will not be digital. The certain experiences can be on the savings plans, for example, but a lot of other products, I think, largely will be sold digitally. Motor, health, I think a lot of that will be sold digitally. Maybe yes, again, 4 to 5 years is again the timeline that I think.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Faisal Khan. A one-liner.
Thank you for mentioning that. When you call it a one line, I would rather say just 5 to 10 years and that's it. Because,
Right.
Thank you. And there's a because. But then, only if you allow me.
Yes. Go
No,
on, 30
I would just say this. There's a lot of, there's a sense of security which lies there in our consumers. And whenever you're paying up, through digital means, it is good enough to swipe your card at a POS. But when it comes to putting in the credit card details on the website, no matter how secure it looks to you, back in the frame of your mind, you would think for a second that whether should I make this transaction or not. So I think you would have to have the sense of security in the minds of the local consumers here that these transactions are safe, have to be safe and secure for this channel to be very, very successful in the years. And that's the reason that, and you see, it's not only about the plastic card, it's also about the other channels, the Pay Pro, be it, you have to be quite innovative, things like Jazz Pay or the same technology which many of these telecommunication channels are using.
Right. So thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, to all of you for taking out your time and for contributing to the InsurTech Summit 2021 presented to you by CXO Global Forum. That's all for now, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. We've got another session coming up.
Great. Thank you, Sohail Saab. Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much, sir.